to be hired, contracted. We are going to be excluded, Cass County. They're gonna have a cap on the population of the county. What they're hoping to address in this, what they discovered with some of the flooding up north this past spring, some of the rural counties, seem to have, struggled with representation from the emergency management side of the equation. This is not intended to be a takeover. This is why I'm bringing it up. From the state to take over emergency management operations at the county level. They don't want it to be received like that. They want it to be received as an option for rural counties to at least have some emergency management representation. So they're simply asking at the conference that we share this with our commission. And if there's further discussion or concern, to certainly try to bring questions back and address those issues. But if you see that the state is going to offer emergency managers, number one, we don't fit into the category they're trying to represent. Number two, they're trying to serve the underrepresented counties. Some of them, it's multiple counties that are represented by one emergency manager. Some of them contract out currently. That's what was going on further north. There are some issues up in Pembina County, it sounds like, and they kind of fell through the cracks. Not pointing fingers, but it happens at times. So that's what they're trying to solve.
That's been the whole problem ever since I've been involved in EM, is that these other rural counties, either the guy has about 2 or 3 counties to take care of, and he's offered not even a minimum wage. Plus, he's probably working with the highway department or the sheriff's office. More than likely, the sheriff's office is a desk jockey in the department, but he's also got to be the emergency manager and probably have 2 or 3 counties to take care of.
That conversation was identical to what was brought up in conference.
So who's paying for it?
Well, I brought up that question, Commissioner Sherling, Mr. Chair, that's a very good question, because when I brought up at the conference in a follow-up call, obviously a lot of our funding that our office receives, the county receives, is through Emergency Management Performance Grant, EMPG. So now is the state, if they get those positions in some of those counties, gonna just hold on to that money? I don't have an answer for that. I do think that is worth watching, because the intent of those dollars in that grant from the federal government passing through the state is to go directly to those counties. So if the state just holds them because they were asked to fulfill this position as an offering and eventually a legislative change, if that happens, do they hoard the money? Those are my words. It's a good
Yeah, I
question.
would keep an eye on that.
County continuity plan, we are getting into the 11th hour of that. It is moving along. I will be meeting, Robert knows that he was towards the last of the list, but the very last department, frankly, is IT. Because they are so crucial to everybody's department in what they can provide and how we go about our daily operations. So by design, that department wants to see what everybody else needs and potentially what they're struggling with. So we bring that, once we have all those individual plans of how they continue to operate some semblance of government for the citizens in the event of a major disaster, then we put them all together. And I have a document in front of it which kind of spells out how we exercise that. Who has the authority to say, hey, it is COVID 2020 now, we have to move into our continuity plan of operations for various departments, yada, 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 and it spells all of that out. So it is moving along nicely and getting a lot of information from individual meetings with the department heads. I'm learning more about the departments than I ever imagined. So it's very appreciative how serious they are taking it. NACO Leadership Course, Amanda at our office is attending that this session. It has led to some fantastic discussions between the two of us. I had the opportunity about a year ago. So I'm just throwing it out there once again as more of a thank you to the commission, to the administration for supporting our attendance to be able to put training like that. Next on here, we had a tour, our office and the City of West Fargo, City of Fargo Emergency Manager to go down south and tour Aldebaran. We got into some corners that were pretty interesting. How that came about is more important than why I bring it up. There are 4 facilities in our county that are required to do large quantity hazardous material reporting. Anybody that has a certain amount of, like the county actually has to report it. Jason's highway department because of fuel. We have a tank right over here by the annex building that we report. And the design behind that reporting is it provides the fire departments direct knowledge of if they have to go to a facility, what kind of a threat or hazard potentially exists. This is a little bit different, and what came out of this was rather interesting. Aldebaran was originally written up that they weren't providing the state this information. We had never heard of it. Our office never even knew this existed. So I call up to the state and I go, who does this site visit and then writes Aldebaran up that they're not reporting this? And they come here and visit and we have no idea that it even this exists. Do they have an authority to punish or levy a fine, or where is this coming from? It's environmental. And I go, organizations already have a means by which they report hazardous material, just like the county does. I go, why aren't these two groups talking to each other in a one-stop shop and putting it in the same location? I get crickets on the other end. That's a really good idea. So now they're going to try and implement that. So not only our first responders know where to go. By the way, so Aldebaran, Sanford, Trail King out in the west part of West Fargo, and I'm missing the third. They're all in the metro area. None of them are in the rural county that have that hazardous material that they are required to report.
Wait, that one's on that?
No, that's,
I know we've got some nuclear stuff.
it might
Okay.
be, it might be, but, so does United Blood Services.
That's like that.
Vital, it is, okay, then that's the one I think we're thinking of.
Okay.
So it was interesting what came out of that whole conversation, and in that one-stop shop and offering that, then our office gets notified as well of where these facilities are located, so we have that information, capability for response, we can plan for them, exercise for it, et cetera, et cetera. Mitigation plan update. It seems like I was just in front of this commission here a few years ago for our 5-year mitigation plan. And quite frankly, it's not due for a renewal until October of 2024. Because the contractor allotment of dollars that they offer us through a grant, it's paid for now out of BRIC funding, BRIC grant dollars. That process is extremely slow, at least according to the grant manager for mitigation plan updates through the state. He's advising us to start now. So what will probably come out of this is I'll reach out to finance office early 2023. We'll have to create, after I come in front of the commission, select contractor, how much that's gonna cost. It's 85%, 15%, and 15% in kind. We'll have to create a fund for that, and we get paid at the end of it. So I really wasn't expecting this to come up this soon. And, but it's something that we have to take care of. So, and essentially, this commission may recall that the 15% match that in kind, or quite frankly, just regular dollars, we go into an agreement with the city of Fargo on a 50-50 cost share split of that 15%. And it's been that way for well before I came into this role. Last but not least, I think there's a golden opportunity. You recall that hazardous material fund that falls under it's another budget item under emergency management. When we did the training with the sheriff's department in the 4 rural school locations with the volunteer fire responders, one of the things that was talked about at that training is stop the bleed, not unlike what was put on here, but in much more detail. We found out that a lot of rural fire departments do not have tourniquets. The tourniquets are not that expensive, but the big thing that you want to do is be consistent with the type of tourniquet that you offer, and that whatever training entity is involved with these rural firefighters, that it's one that they recommend. So we're on the very early stages of reaching out to our rural fire, kind of assessing how many of them need tourniquets. This is exactly what a good example of spending some of those dollars out of that hazardous material fund that the county has that just goes on indefinitely, and we get we did an annual check from the state where we can expend some of those dollars for our rural firefighting grants. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to deal with Ringdale Ambulance, of course Sanford Ambulance, those departments directly, and try to capture that information, try to get our head around some costs, and whatever we can support, We'll work that out in the end. But if it comes out to whatever amount, this body here will certainly hear about it before any kind of purchase. That's my report. Thank you.
Birch. I and Stefan were singularly focused in that broad range of topics. The sheriff brought it up really during our earlier discussion, recruitment and retention. There's a dynamic in my office that you all may appreciate. One, for a couple of reasons. One, after a meager 24 years with the county, Robert Stoll, my chief deputy, and we need to fill that chief deputy position, meaning with an attorney, not with the chief deputy necessarily. And I'm leaving, so we're going to need to fill my position because the 2 people who are running for it are from within my office. There is at least a decent chance that whoever is unsuccessful in that election will find different work thereafter. And there's a chance that one of my attorneys who works in child welfare out in Cleveland, who's running for judge, is going to be successful in her effort on November 8th. And if so, if that happens, we'd be looking for, under that summary, 4 attorneys. We recently did some interviewing. We were able to interview 3. And if all of them accepted the offer, we'd still be short. It doesn't mean another recruiting effort won't get more people, but while I'm attempting to interview for Tracy's position and my own, because we don't know what's happening with the other 2 yet, there are several other state's attorneys' offices around the state who are all advertising for lawyers. So it's a thin market. It's not just here that it's difficult. We used to get quite a lot of people that were applicants. Our pools these days, when we seek to fill those positions, are much smaller than they used to be. But that's true. I got the same input from my counterparts around the state. I talked to Brian Melton over in Clay County recently, and he said the same things happened to him. There's not a complete shortage of lawyers, but for some reason they're thinner on the ground than they used to be. So I'm concerned about how we will fill all of those positions. We'll just keep trying until we're able to right candidates. We also have some trouble in our lowest position in the office file clerk. We're working again to fill that position. And that seems to be a perpetual turnover. I don't have much fix for that. But it's the lowest level position the county has. It's an important job, but we don't pay a whole lot.
Bruce, is that when we paid 100 people?
Yeah, that's the last thing I say out loud. And we did pay $5,000 this summer. This is the mea culpa piece. $5,000 to hire somebody from Kelly Services who had worked for us for a couple of months, was doing a great job, wanted the job, and then she stopped showing up. And couldn't justify her absences, and we let her go here recently. So now we're trying to fill that. So I apologize for the $5,000 you spent for what seemed like a good idea and didn't really work out. Anyway, so it's recruiting and retention is a piece of it. I don't know, from the lawyer point of view, I don't know that that's retention exactly the issue. There are sort of dynamics here that I don't expect really to repeat. It's not like we see a lot of turnover where people come here for a year or two and then go out into the civil world and handle civil cases. We don't get a lot of that. Most people who come want to stay and do stay. But at lower positions, that's not always true. And we have a limited amount we have a limited amount of opportunity to grow within the office, let's say in our support staff group, although we have had a pretty good track record of taking people who started at our lowest position and advancing them within the office to higher positions and better salary. But it doesn't always work out if you're not one of the ones who moves along and look for something else. Julie?
At the most recent printing of the inter-office phone numbers, the 4-digit ones, I couldn't find one for Mr. Valley. Is he no longer with you?
He is. He's not here today, but he is in there. So I don't know why that wouldn't show up there.
Okay, I was wondering because I was looking for his number and couldn't find one of the 4-digit numbers for him.
Oh, if you want me to get that extension to you, I can. I haven't got it memorized, but I can get that to you if you'd like.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Burdick, I apologize for email and keep my noise down. So we've got a new director of HR. When transitioning from person A to person B, there's always opportunities to change and evolve if it makes sense and prudent. Have we adjusted the way we've been advertising for your staff? That's a question to Mr. Wilson as well. Obviously, the comparison I have is an easy one, but some of us know, some of us don't. Regarding applications done by a marketing director with the diversion authority. We got a couple applications on when we did it. When the diversion authority did it, they had a plethora of applications. Now, yes, a good portion of them were trash. Just folks looking to maintain their unemployment, et cetera. But boy, a lot of people who show up that are qualified. And I'm wondering if it's time to investigate how we advertise in terms of something as simple as we weren't apparently putting salary ranges on. Cindy made that transition before she left, but is there a way to evolve the way we advertise, not just for Mr. Burdick's position, but holistically? And if you have any ideas, this isn't a question for today necessarily, but it'd be fascinating to find out if we're missing the boat on opportunities regarding advertising for people.
I think we probably could look at doing some things. I know we haven't changed anything since when Cindy was here, where we're still advertising in the same way. The people that we've hired and the people that have come through as new hires, they normally hear about us from Indeed. That's the platform that tends to get the most traffic, I guess. Brielle and I had talked about maybe looking at doing some things differently. We haven't got there yet, but I think there probably is some room for improvement in getting that word out to the right folks. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we're always looking for opportunities to get better. And, one of the things I'm excited about is that we've got somebody that comes to the position with fresh eyes. And so we're talking about, the things that are going to be emphasized through the strategic plan update. We've got an ability to sort of scan the market, see what others are doing, see if there are things that others are doing that we're not, and if we find those things, absolutely, we'll jump forward. I mean, I think it's worth recognizing that in the past year and a couple of months, we've hired a new finance director, an IT director, a social service director, and an HR director. And I mean, I'd put the group that we got into every one of those positions up against any of their counterparts in the metro area.
Did we create a new social service position, director?
I'm talking about the zone director, and we were sort of half involved there. But so I think, is there opportunity to get better? Yes. But I think recognizing that when you operate in the market that we have right now, margins and application pools are thin. But I think we've done pretty darn well.
And just to add on to that, for Tracy and Robert talking about advertising, it probably would be a good time to start advertising for a new parks director. And start soon.
You are 100% correct, and we already have a referral of somebody who is interested in the position and is a stable long-term camper that becomes well referenced.
Verified that?
Wasn't our last guy a stable, long-term camper?
It's clear to me that I need to find out more after this meeting, what exactly happened this summer out there. But in the narrow sliver, Chad's comment, the narrow sliver of recruitment of attorneys, the primary source of outreach is through the North Dakota Supreme Court, because we need to have licensed attorneys that are licensed in North Dakota to practice here. That said, you could, somebody who's got enough experience and licensed elsewhere, the state made it easier to get your license changed over to North Dakota without a tremendous effort. And so we could probably do some more outreach outside. Whether the people outside who are going to want to come into North Dakota, I feel it's unlikely that people in the state of Florida are going to want to come to North Dakota, for example. But people from Minnesota, Montana, maybe. I mean, Fargo is different than lots of other places, and there's got a lot going on here. It's in part why I think we do have applicants who come, just less than we used to have before. There's a lot going on in Fargo, and as far as our office goes, we've got quite a number of attorneys in our office, and I advertise that to people when I talk to them about its benefit, because you've got all these folks around you willing to sit down and talk with you and go over ideas and how to exercise discretion, that kind of thing. It's a supportive environment, I think, for the most part, for attorneys who can chat with others about what the right thing might be, because that's our goal. That said, maybe there's better outreach we can do on the attorney front as well as we do on others. I just know I've heard the same difficulty in finding recruits across offices in this state, and not only as far as Clay County and Moorhead, but I heard that same thing.
Bigger picture, like I said, not answered today, but I'm talking about recruiting from Los Angeles and Seattle and the places that are on fire right now. Getting people that maybe don't want to stay there because they see what's happening. So again, focusing on stealing our own. I get it, that's where I get my staff from too. But getting outside this region and saying we're different. This is what I said on my county tours too, saying we are not bragging enough about how awesome we are. You've got towns that are burning down, and you've got states that are all turning to third world countries. And there are people in those states that if they know they can make a living here and have a good time and have safe families and good schools, they might consider moving. Now, there's not going to be 10,000 of them, But what if we could get 3 from Los Angeles and just go, I'm done with the state, I'm done with the city, I'm conservative, I'm sorry, I'm political. And you know what, Fargo's, or they're a little bit left, Fargo's just enough left for me where they're still normal. And yes, it's cold, but I'm gonna make $100,000 a year, I would have safe school. The point is, for a different discussion, but I wouldn't be targeting Clay County, I'd be targeting LA and Chicago, saying, yep, Minneapolis.
To Florida after the hurricane.
Yeah. Toward that end, I agree with you. Having been born and raised here, left for 20 years and come back, I love this place. We pay a good salary. I don't know how our salary compares with LA and Chicago, for example. And I'm not sure that it's salary that's going to draw people here. And you have to remember that North Dakota is not necessarily a destination spot for a lot of people until you get here and live here and find out why it is a good spot to be. But I don't know that people immediately think to themselves, wow, I'd love to go to North Dakota. But I mean, not that you can't get over that, but you gotta get the hook in their mouth and bring them in before you can talk to them and try and convince them of that, and I'm not sure. But it's worth trying. I don't know exactly how you best advertise in those locations, but we could find that out maybe through their Supreme Court or the like.
How do you recruit at UND or any of the Minnesota schools at all? And I'm not talking about recent graduates, but I'm talking about their alumni I know an alumni that lives in LA, actually, that,
Every lawyer who's licensed in North Dakota gets the Supreme Court emails.
okay. So
They're posted almost daily, the job openings.
okay. Well,
So,
then you're
how about lawyer, you're asking, Chad, how
You
about,
saying alumni? So what about lawyers that aren't licensed in North Dakota? Again, I don't wanna steal from my neighbors, I wanna steal from my faraway neighbors.
if they're not licensed in North Dakota, then I suppose they could sign up for it, but I think it's probably doubtful that they're getting those. They left North Dakota for one reason or another, who knows what. If they're out in their career ways, the question is prosecution something they're going to want to do? And it may be. I
I'm
think,
pretty prosecuting anyone in New York right now, they're staring at each other. So there's a whole city.
I mean, I think it's an outstanding profession because, as I've said a million times, your job when you go to work today is to do the right thing. For a lawyer, that's a pretty great mission. And it's not necessarily like that when you're in civil practice. And if you find you're doing the wrong thing, you can just stop and fix it. Harder to do when you've got a private client. But we can certainly do a different kind of recruiting and see if that yields more people than we've had so far. But we felt from the recruitment pool, the applicant pool that we had this time, that we could interview 3 of them. I say I could hire all 3, I probably would, but that will probably still be short by the end of the year.
I'm sorry, how many did you say?
If I remember, 4. I think 4 is just right.
And one was a North Dakota Supreme Court clerk and couldn't come on right away,
Yeah.
and so that sort of,
The Supreme Court clerks
the
have a
timing of it.
contract, and this person's contract went from the beginning of August through the end of next July.
I see.
And she applied because she said she understood, which is a head scratcher for me, that you don't get into our office until you apply a few times first. That may have been true because we try and pick the best applicants, but that has never been a policy of the office to see if you'll apply 3 or 4 times like I really wanted. But that somehow has gotten out into the room.
All right, moving on, recruiting, Rita.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the remodel in our office. If you have time, stop and see it. We have a few redos. They didn't quite do the painting of the trim work right, so Jean has them in there redoing it all. And we had some damaged furniture come in, and that's all been ordered for replacement, but it's beautiful, it's great, everyone's happy, and we feel like we're in 2022, so thank you so much for doing that.
It showed on your Zoom program.
Yeah,
You
saw
did.
the green backgrounds?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it did.
Yeah, well, we have no green down there right now. It's actually all blue gray, and so it's really pretty. Yes, I thank you to Dwayne and Mary. They were on our legislative sharing session last week that we did for our legislators. Robert, were you on?
I was not able to make it.
But I
apologize.
did send a link out,
Yep.
so I'm not gonna really talk about our programming, I'm gonna ask you to take a look at what we highlighted in our programming for the legislators. We were really pleased with it, and we got a talented office, we put that all together ourselves, the videos, that whole thing, so we got a lot of technology down there called young people, and so, so please take a look at that for our update on our programs. I have a thing I gotta share with you in a minute, but I just have to let you know, I'm getting 35 years of experience in extension. The first week of November, so I started my 36th year, which I can't believe. And so I've been around a little while. And then we talk about interns and projects, right? Well, during COVID, I had one of my interns work on a project for us. It was called Virtual Cooking School and Baking School. We were just named the national winner in our association for that project. And so we got the award 2 weeks ago out in North Carolina. So we can say how interns can make a big difference, because I would never have had time to videotape all those recipes and making all those recipes. But so we used that project to make a great program that was recognized nationally. So
That's great.
So this is the thing that hit my desk this morning, and I didn't know if I was going to bring it up or not bring it up, but I'm bringing it up. NDSU has just come out with a new staff flexible remote work policy. It was released today, and by November 1st, we have the opportunity to sign up if we want to work remotely or not work remotely. And there's all kinds of situations. It's not just one page of policies. As you can see, there's a whole pile of it. And I don't really know much more about it. I downloaded it at 9 o'clock this morning. And it's if you want to work remotely completely, hybrid remotely. There's a lot of criteria. Our supervisor has to agree with it. NDSU president has to agree with it. County commissioners, if we go down that way, need to agree with it. And we have not received anything from our vice president of Ag, Dr. Lardy or Lynette Flage, on how that fits into our role. But I just wanted you to know it was released to all of us this morning. I don't know where it's going from there. I don't even know what the interest in our office is. I did say this at my staff meeting that I'm not too keen on it because we just spent $112,000 remodeling your offices. So that's what I said to my coworkers. But I can't say much more because it's their decision between them and the supervisors and you.
So it is, the employee would have to agree?
The employee, me, yeah.
No, I mean, the actual employee would have to agree. You couldn't tell one of your staff, you know what, we're gonna want you to just work remotely and then show up for.
Actually, I can't say anything. It
That's
would be,
not the new policy.
it would be me saying to Leslie, hey Leslie, I really want to work from home full time from now on, and fill out the paperwork. Leslie's my district director. Fill out the paperwork, and then Dr. Lardy and Lynette would have to sign off on it. So there's a few steps to sign on it. Or I could say, Leslie, I decided I want to work 1 day a week from home and 4 days from the office.
Mhm.
But we have to have the application, you have to have a reason why you want to work from home. And they have clearly written it out. It's not for daycare. It's not for,
Right.
they've really written it out that what it's for and what it's not for.
Well, it's just an observation. It's something that I would have liked to have seen, shared with Robert ahead of time, or somebody, just because it does affect the courthouses that house, and pay for the housing for your staff. I just think it'd be good to have the county's input, even if it's, even if it's just,
We heard nothing, rumor mills. We had nothing, no one had heard any of this happening.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems to me, a lot of your agents aren't sitting behind your desk all day long. They're out and about in the communities, so it certainly makes sense. Maybe there could be an opportunity for shared desk space or something. I don't know, but it would have been nice to have been just brought into it before.
I did,
Yeah.
hit the
like I
ground.
said, I did put a message into Leslie early this morning saying, as soon as I got this, that I was meeting with you, anything we don't know much about it.
Yeah. Do you think anybody in your department will
Um,
want to do it?
maybe one would like to do like 1 day a week. Address everyone else is like, no, we're people, we need to go into the office. And we're supposed to be there to serve the people. And if you're not there to serve the people when they come in, we will not have anyone that will go full-time working from home.
Do you get very many people that just walk in the door?
We get a lot of 4-H, we get a lot of hort. Canning season, I get a lot. So, you know, I don't know what you say a lot, but we get between 5 and 10 maybe a day.
Yeah,
That walks through our door. It depends on the season.
Yeah.
When the farm bill hits, well, we get lots of farm bill. We'll get a lot walking through our doors.
Yeah.
So it depends on the season.
I think it'd be interesting to have Gail and Heather in the zone see that, because another sort of county, sort of state office, and I know they put a pause on any remote working at the moment as they were looking to kind of revise their criteria. And if we had something that matched up across these quasi-county state offices, that probably would be at least a good template to be aware of as they're putting their plan together.
So one thing I really do realize is that Cass County is probably one of the only counties that like this might be feasible in, because other counties, they only have 1 staff. And, you know, so I'm assuming that Cass and Grand Forks are probably the only 2 counties that might have the opportunity, because we have more than 1 support staff. Actually, we have more than 1 staff. So it might just be a new situation for extension.
So does this apply to the on-campus employees
Yeah,
as
well, this is mostly for all on
Okay.
campus. But you know, they treat us all the same on
Right.
campus. I think they forget they have 100 of us off campus.
Okay,
So this was, I think, if you read it, it's really designed for on campus
okay.
and how, you know. So,
And do you happen to know just offhand how it meshes up with our county policy?
no clue.
I'd be curious to know,
Yeah, we could
how it compares.
take a side-by-side look at.
Well, it's kind of funny because it talks about requirements of what kind of chair you have to have and desk you have to have, and
Oh, really?
the liability like, for your insurance at home that you'll cover for any damage to your equipment. So it's pretty laid out here that if you're working from home, and you have to actually sign off that you're gonna take exercise breaks so you don't have joint problems. And so it's pretty spelled out.
Wow.
Chad, you're shaking your head. It's like,
Yep, there's a friend of mine that has a job working for a national healthcare cooperative. It's out of New York, is where she works. And that's what it is. You have to prove to them with photos, here's your office space, here's your desk, here's where your computer will sit. Yeah, because they're thinking about carpal tunnel.
yeah.
They're thinking liability. They're thinking,
Yeah.
I have to replicate what you have here at your house, or if something goes awry in New York, you will get sued.
And you can't use your personal computer, but you have to buy your own chair and your own desk, and, I mean, they got it pretty spelled out.
And they mandate the 15-minute breaks. And if you have, so it's for healthcare, which is mental health in part, if you have a bad call, like a suicide or something like that, you are required to take time after that. Like they spell, if this is your category of call and it goes not well, they say you're done now. You go for a walk, you go do something to get away from the phone, so you don't have another one follow up when you have 2 bad calls in a row or whatever. Yeah, it's remarkable.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to bring this to your attention because, like I said, we got a message on Friday that's this flexible work policy was going to be released Monday, so we couldn't wait to open it this morning when we all got to work, and it can be effective as soon as November 1st. So,
Have they not
Just
had
got
one
it
before?
today,
yeah,
so you really haven't had a chance to review
I have
it.
not read it.
How could you even get your home equipped in that amount of time?
I don't know. I don't know. They have learning sessions for us next week. So,
All right, Rita, anything else?
no, thanks, guys.
Christie?
Okay, I have a short PowerPoint.
Are you show us your new band?
What?
Are you gonna show us your new band?
I wish.
Yeah, right.
We'll talk about that. Give me a box of Kleenexes. Okay, so, next
Give
slide,
us a
please.
smell test.
Yeah, I'll tell you about that too. So just to reintroduce everybody, this is a staff that we have right now. Natalie and Darren are both full-time, and Jasmine is our part-time. A blessing. We have had really hard time finding a part-time person, and she is fitting in perfectly. She had worked at a funeral home prior to coming over and working with us. I do want to toot Natalie's horn a little bit and let everybody know that she just passed her national certification with the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators. So she is now officially certified as a medical legal death investigator. Lots of studying for that, but we're really proud of her and really glad that we can have her. I think Darren, Natalie, and I are all certified, and I think in North Dakota at one time there were 7 people, and people have left. So now I think there's 4 active. Pretty proud of our group. That certification.
So no one dies in the other 52 counties apparently. It's good to know. Anyway.
Save your jokes, because there's some good stuff coming up.
Good.
Next slide, please. Just letting you know where we're at with the number of deaths that we have per year. Last year we had 745 approximate, give or take 1 or 2. This year to date we're at 570. So where we are today compared to where we were last year, we're 2.5% above our numbers, and I would predict that we're going to go above the numbers that we had last year.
Due to any particular thing?
No, just a broad range. You know, I always think that our numbers, a lot of our numbers and our increase is really because now we've got that level 1 trauma center. So we're getting a lot of cases from Minnesota that is making, they're complicated, especially when they're coming over from the reservations. It doesn't seem like there's really interest on the Minnesota side to investigate those deaths, so they leave it to us and we take that on. Oftentimes we're doing autopsies on those cases. So I think really it would be interesting to someday do some statistics to see what that's costing us for these individuals that are coming over from the Minnesota side, because the numbers are quite high. But that's something that we just need to calculate into our costs every year. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, not knowing how well networked you are within your community, I looked at places like St. Louis, where you've got, or Kansas City, I think is where you've got border cities that are large. Is there any kind of MOU or anything in place that would ask them to reimburse, or how, and again, you probably can't answer this today, but I'd be curious to find out what other city border communities do when you've got one side that has capacity, the other side doesn't, so they default, and how they treat that expense across the border.
Yeah, it's a discussion that I want to have, that I'll be having in the future, especially with the next legislative session coming in.
That's where I'm going, yeah.
Yeah, it isn't just with the Minnesota counties. My understanding is that there isn't a whole lot that we can do with the Minnesota counties to get reimbursement, but there is something we could do with North Dakota. So say we get somebody coming from Bismarck, or we won't be Fargo, they got here, and that's our responsibility. Somehow or another, we should be able to go back to the county where they have residency to be able to cover some of those costs. I don't know what would be involved in that, but I think it's something that we need to address.
Legislatively, that will never go anywhere.
Probably not.
So we don't get reimbursed, or you don't get reimbursed for anything that comes in from the Minnesota side? Maybe we ought to follow Yellowstone and take him to the train station.
Yeah.
Don't know what that means, but okay.
You have to watch the
He's been
program to
binge
catch
watching.
that.
Only if you watch it, you get that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of cost to that. I mean, if you figure out a body bag, if you figure out staff time, you figure out transportation, and then you figure out what the cost is to the state for those autopsies.
Body bag alone is over $100 now.
Yeah, it's about 80, 100, yeah.
Have you built them?
Have I built? I have built.
Minnesota side.
Minnesota.
Yeah, have you been able to?
In the past, I've had discussions with the law enforcement. So it's interesting because Clay County wants a lot of their cases back. Then there's times that they don't want them. So where do you set where do you set the criteria that you're gonna do it with one county versus another? Minnesota state law is where the body dies is who has jurisdiction, not where the injury occurred. North Dakota's state law is where the body dies has jurisdiction. However, you can work with other counties to give jurisdiction back. It's a mess, and I think just the coroner, everything in legislation with the coroner system is a mess. I'll jump to that when I talk to a little bit more about some conversations that I've had. But yes, to answer your question, I have. Sometimes it's been successful, sometimes more often not, it's not. So.
Christie and I and Birch have had some interesting conversations with representatives from Clay County in the past on these topics.
I think that situation has gotten better. Right now where the agreement is when we get something, say from Clay County, and they say, we want this back, fine, send us a letter from your law enforcement agency saying that we have no responsibility once we release jurisdiction. It's gone fine, but in the past we've had a lot of heated arguments about it, and so thankfully that has resolved. But yeah, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to why somebody wants a case and why they don't. Sometimes they want it if it's a high profile. Other times, oh, it's just a hanging. You can take care of it yourself. So, all right, next slide, please. Number of homicides. I always think this is interesting because I know the number of stabbings, and Birch, you probably know the number of shootings that happen in Cass County, but to date we've only had 4 homicides. I think in a county this size, it's phenomenal that we have only had 4 homicides in Cass County so far this year. So I just wanted to show this to you. I don't know why our numbers are higher any year from the next. There were 2 years that we didn't have any homicides, so just a little interesting tidbit for you. Okay? Was there another slide?
Was it 2020 you had the peak? Do you think that had anything to do with COVID?
No.
No.
It's generally drugs and women.
Ain't that life?
Let me rephrase that. It's generally drugs or women or men. Yeah. So.
Jim just said something about the blue ball people.
No, I didn't.
All right. Going to the next slide. This seems to be a very interesting topic of conversation, and it is. We are seeing, I think we're in crisis mode with mental health right now. It is amazing to me also the number of suicidals that come in every day through dispatch and the number of saves there. I think we need to really be focusing on that number. To date, we've had 34 suicides. The highest peak that we had was in 2019, and that was right before COVID. So a lot of people say, well, did COVID have anything to do with the number of suicides? I don't think it is a direct relation. Granted, yes, I think people are having mental health increase in mental health, but I don't think it's necessarily just from COVID. I think we're seeing a lot of people who are asking for help. And again, I feel like those numbers are low. I should reach out to some of my colleagues who have population sizes similar to ours and find out what their numbers are. I think we do really well. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of resources for long-term care if you have a mental health issue, but I think they're working, the state's working on that, or hopefully they're working on that.
They are not. That's legislative, they're trying to close Jamestown, not expand Jamestown, anyway.
Well, hopefully they have more beds opening at Prairie with that addition. That'll help. Okay, another topic which is hot is drug-related deaths. So what we're finding with our office specifically is these M30s are around. M30s are oxycodone, but typically what happens is that they're not from a pharmaceutical from a pharmaceutical company. They're not FDA approved. So they're manufactured and then they might be laced with some fentanyl. And that's what we're seeing as these M30s that are coming through are an oxycodone. They're generally a mixture of ecstasy, oxycodone, or hydrocodone, and methamphetamine. They might have fentanyl in it. So we are seeing some of that. Methamphetamine last year was the highest drug that was causing death. This year it seems to be substantially low, but one thing that I want to really get across is that when I do our stats for our office, we are taking into consideration anybody that has methamphetamine in their system, regardless if it's what caused the death or not. So say somebody was in a car accident and they have blunt force injuries. That was what their cause of death is. But then we get their text back and it says that they have methamphetamine on board. Well, their cause of death isn't because of a drug overdose. It's because of the accident. But I am keeping track of all of these cases that have methamphetamine in their system. So if you hear something through Paracast Public Health, they typically get their numbers from us. But if you hear some contradicting information, everybody's doing their stats a little bit different.
So do you think this Narcan, do you think that has any influence on why those numbers are down, that's more prevalent now?
Well, Narcan doesn't do anything for methamphetamine, but if you go to the next slide, we've got, these are the opiate related, so I believe that's why those numbers are down.
Okay.
Narcan has been a huge lifesaver in that we know what's coming across dispatch, and there are oftentimes, I would have to say a good number of people who are using drugs now have Narcan with them. I know a lot of people who don't use, they don't have any friends or family that use, but they just have it in their purse in case they come across somebody who's using, because it's so prevalent in our area. And again,
you know, it was prescribed to my husband along with his post-surgical knee replacement. Here's your pain meds, and oh, here's the Narcan. And I'm like, really?
yes,
You know?
and that's interesting too. I remember seeing that and going, why would this person have Narcan? But then we learned that oftentimes if you're getting a prescription for an opiate, that they're going to give you Narcan along with it, providing that you know you're overdosing, you can use it fast enough. But anyway, I think these are reassuring. We have seen a big spike in the last month and a half in fentanyl, so it's going to be interesting to see what the end of the year turns out. We've got a lot of cases that we're still waiting for tox results. That's taking anywhere now up to 3 to 4 months to get back the drug results, and that's because we don't have the ability to clean them at the state crime lab, so they have to send them out to Milwaukee, and everybody's just backed up. So,
yeah, okay.
and then the next slide is the total of drug-related deaths for the year so far. So we're at 37. Compared to last year, 47, we'll exceed that again this year. That's where we are right now. And I think that might be my last slide. Is that it, Catlin? Yep. Okay. So, any questions on the drugs or the deaths in general? So going back to the legislation, there is no association, there's no coroners association in North Dakota. The medical examiner and the coroner's office are very separate. The medical examiner does not oversee coroners. We use them to do autopsies. I started up an email group for all of the coroners, and we have been meeting on a fairly frequent basis to have discussions about what people are seeing in their counties, what kind of stressors they have, to talk about training opportunities and that sort of thing. I've gotten really good feedback that the coroners in the other counties are really appreciative that there is this outlet where they can bounce things off of each other, because oftentimes they're just told by their commissioners, oh, guess what, you're gonna be the next county coroner, have at it. And there's no training, there's no support. Oftentimes I'll have somebody say to me, well, how did you get this? Or how do you go about doing this? And then when I tell them, well, we've got our commissioners and we work really well together and they're supportive and, you know, we don't always get what we want, but they listen and so on and so forth. It's amazing to me that I feel bad. I feel bad for some of these coroners that are in these counties who have no support at all. But we really are a unicorn, I think, in Cass County. When I was on our last phone meeting, I went over a couple of different things in North Dakota Century Code and said, you know, let's look at this. I think we need to reword this. It really isn't up to date with what the standard should be. And it was crickets. They aren't getting the number of calls that we're getting. Sometimes they might get 5 calls in 6 months. They don't have a place to store their bodies. They don't have support. They don't even have resources to be able to do their jobs appropriately. So I kind of feel like I can't make that decision to change North Dakota Century Code when we're really a minority here, even though we're the biggest county in North Dakota. Probably something I need to talk to you about, but there are a lot of things in legislation that need to be changed, but I don't know how it's going to affect the smaller communities. That makes sense. Going to our van. Do you want the good news or the bad?
All the news.
Okay, well, I'll give you both bad news. We had a little mishap in our big van. I sent a message to Robert and Commissioner Capitan. We had a little bit of a fluid issue with a decedent that leaked into the carpet in our big van, and we called a company to come over and clean the van out because the smell was so bad, and that was about an $800 bill for hazmat. And a week later, we got inundated with flies in our office, and we're still swatting them. We've had to put fly strips everywhere in our office, and I just hope this is done. It's a big issue. The smell, I think, of the van is still bad. I've got to talk to Jean. I'm leaving here for a few days, but when I come back, I need to talk to Jean about potentially ripping that carpet out, because I think it's a bigger issue than just the smell. I think when you're getting that stuff underneath the carpet, it's a health issue.
Where are the flies? In your office or in the garage?
Both.
Do you remember what the problem was when that building was first built? Remember?
The sewer, we had the sewer, yeah. The sewer
Yeah,
smells.
they never snake
smells
they
so
never
bad.
snake the sewer out.
Gas at one time, I know.
Yeah, so what they did is they just put all the work in and then never snaked the existing sewer out. So we were gonna go through, it's,
And we still have that issue too. It's not as bad since they've gone in and rooted it a little bit, but it's still, we still have to run water down the drains. I did get a comment from somebody that they did notice the smell, and I don't know how people in that building couldn't smell it. But we'll talk with Gene. If we had had that new van, we would have been just able to spray it out, but we had fire come over, we had to have them help us. Let's just say that getting the decedent out of the van, and then there was fluid everywhere on the floor into a tray, there was fluid. It was like taking a Roomba vacuum on the floor with dog poo and just letting it go. It was like, where do you even turn to? It's probably one of the worst issues that we've had at our office to date. So anyway, that's where we're at with the van. And with the new van, we are told 2023 and they don't have a date.
I
So,
think that should probably have Gene or somebody take that carpet out ASAP, because it's probably permeated all the way into the metal of the vehicle now.
yeah,
And I don't know if there's a paint or a spray you can, they do that when you have a cadaver inside of a house that gets into the sheetrock and the studding and all that stuff.
they gut it. You have to gut. You have
Yeah.
to gut the house, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just even psychologically, the thought of what's under that carpet, even if the smell isn't there, is just, it's something that you can't just spray over with Lysol. That's my feeling. I just don't think you can do that, but, we can't get that van fast enough. I think the 400-pound bodies. Fargo Fire has had a really good attitude. The last month, we've had to call them a lot for lift assist, and they've been very, very good about coming over. I emailed Chief Dirksen and said, thank you, thank your battalions for coming over. I know that nobody wants to do this, but somebody has to do it. So with that being said, that's something that I'd also like to get some feedback on from commissioners about livery. You know, at a coroner our office wasn't, a job responsibility isn't to do a removal for bodies. We had the funeral homes doing that, and they were charging for it. And then we had the ambulance doing it, and they were charging for it. And then we had a livery service doing it, and they were charging for it. We are getting a vehicle, which comes at a cost. But I also think that it's an extra step and an extra resource that we're providing, and we're not charging much for it. So just something to think about, what your thoughts are on, should we be charging for this? Because the funeral homes turn around and they charge the families for removals to come over to our office during daytime hours to pick a body up. If you want to email me or talk about it later, let me know, but I think it's something before January 1st that we need to take into consideration. And right now, I think we charge $150. The ambulance charges us $300, so we pay $150, and then the funeral home pays the other half. But the ambulance isn't doing it anymore, so something to think about.
And are they charging the families for the full amount, even though they're not charging them?
I can't speak for them. I know one funeral home did or has. So in looking at what a removal means, you've got us or the ambulance going 3 o'clock in the morning, going up 2 flights of stairs to pick a body up, wedged in between a toilet and a bathtub, and they're 3 days deceased. And then putting them in a body bag, putting them on a gurney, taking them out of the apartment building and back to our morgue, versus a funeral home coming over and picking up a body that's already in a bag, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Who should be getting that removal fee?
Yeah.
We don't have any way of directly billing the family at this point. Sometimes if they're indigent services, and I've talked with Gail about this, the funeral homes get the removal fees. So we don't see any of that from social services. And I told Gail, I think we need to have some compensation for that versus the funeral homes having compensation for all of it.
Christie, much more? Running out of time.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Tracy?
I don't have anything.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Tracy.
No,
I
She
think
just
this
gave
is
it all
the-
to you, so we're okay.
Yep,
What's that? I think this is the.
I yield my time, is what Tracy just said.
Yield my time.
I could give a quick update for VSO.
Rob, you cannot do anything quick. Oh, you won't let you drop. We're gonna give you a shot at it, Robert, go ahead.
The operating term was quick.
Speaking on behalf of Chris Deary, VSO, 3 items. He's away at a training right now. We've worked with Chris and Jean. There's a initiative through NACO, Operation Greenlight, to illuminate county buildings with green filters, green lights for Veterans Day. Gene is thinking he can do this because of a new type of lighting we've done around the building. So we're not locked in yet, but he's working on it, and would be kind of a cool display if we can do that. He is going to be coming. Chris is going to be coming to the commission for a budget adjustment, probably at the next commission meeting. You'll recall you approved a part of his budget for '23 as a new copier, and the vendor told him a couple of months ago, you better get the order in now because it won't be delivered until well into '23. Well, he got a call last week, said, we got your copier. If you don't want it now, we've got 3 other people that want it. So it was accept it or you lose out and go to the back of the line. So Sarah and Brandy are aware of this. It will require a budget adjustment, but it was not for lack of planning on his end, but kind of got the issue thrown back on his face. Final thing is a project or something that I heard about at the NACO meeting last summer, passed it off to Chris. I don't know exactly what the status of this is, but he's working with a group out of California, have an initiative known as Bento. And they are working with a for-profit / nonprofit that is trying to provide services for veterans, connect veterans to public medical, mental health services they need in the community. I'm not 100% sure where their funding or where their profit comes from, other than they charge an admin fee. And so I think we've got some ability to push back on that admin fee that they're looking at. But essentially, for a price for this fee, they identify the hardest to serve, the most difficult of your transient, homeless, chronically mentally ill, chronically homeless in the community, and sort of keep tabs on them, keep them under some ability to provide treatment, assessment through essentially food vouchers. And I'm not doing a very good job explaining this, but it basically it's the carrot and the stick. How do we keep tabs on you and assure that you're not going into crisis mode? That means inpatient stay or getting yourself in trouble with the criminal justice system. We will give you the card to come get a hamburger while you show up. Hey, do you need anything? Are you doing all right? Are you taking your meds? Do you have the boots you need to complete your job at day labor? And so I know he was going to reach out to some of the different shelters around town. He was working with Gail, a number of different entities to sort of assess the need, the potential of this. Haven't talked to him in the last couple of days, but that is something that he is working on. And that'll conclude my report for VSO.
All right, Robert,
Yeah.
real quick, is Chris letting the city of Fargo, West Fargo know about Operation Greenlight?
I don't know what all contacts he's had.
Okay.
I know that on the NACO perspective, it's really focused out of the VSO offices.
Yeah.
All right, this meeting's adjourned.
All right, thank you. My office real quick. All right.